AITA for forbidding my wife from attending her affair partner's funeral? We've been married 15 years and almost didn't make it this far. When I was gone in our second year of marriage, my wife returned home and slept with some dickhead, who I'll refer to as SD from now on, with whom she had a loose acquaintance growing up. She hadn't seen him in years, but he happened to turn up at my daughter's birthday party since he was the son of one of my mother-in-law's old acquaintances. SD and my wife met again later that week after reuniting. I didn't kick my wife's ass and finally forgive her since she told me shortly after I arrived home. And she didn't try to rationalize it by saying, "Oh, you were gone, I was lonely, blah blah blah." No, she admitted outright that she was a kicking fool, her words, not mine, though I agree, and that she felt ill and disgusted for doing so. She immediately cut off all contact with SD, and it took a lot of counseling and mending to get to where we are today. It feels like my wife has gone above and beyond since then to prove that I was correct to keep her. My mother-in-law called yesterday and said she had learned from SD's mother that he died in a job accident and that there will be a burial ceremony this weekend. My wife told me this and that she wanted to leave, and I felt like I had been kicked in the dick. I immediately felt queasy and had kicking horrific flashbacks to when she told me about her affair. All of those terrible sentiments resurfaced, coupled with the disturbing recollections of me bawling my bleeding eyes out and my image of her dissolving. The pain was as fresh as when she dropped the bomb on me. I asked her why, given that she hadn't spoken to him in over a decade, and she raped him when we were married. She keeps repeating things like it's the right thing to do and she just wants to pay her respects. I can't stop saying how heartbroken I am by his decision because he hasn't been a part of her life in so long, and I'm reliving all those horrible nights when I was sure our family would be shattered and I'd only see my daughter half of the time. After some back and forth, I put my ugly foot down and told her no, she couldn't go. I said that was disrespectful to me and our marriage, and we've been silent ever since. Aita? Edit, it appears that people are starting to misinterpret my statement by claiming, it feels like my wife has gone above and beyond since that time to prove that I was right to keep her. As if I'm claiming ownership of her and treating her like property. That is not the case. I am simply demonstrating that she did not only promise to do better, she demonstrated it through her actions and has made me a very happy man during our time together. Edit 2, I apologize for nothing, and it brings a glad tear to my eye to see so many people referring to him as SD, because that's exactly who he was. Kick him. Many people say it's her decision, which it is, but that doesn't mean I have to like or support it. And right now I can see myself walking away if she persists on attending. We are going to counseling starting tomorrow. Ada, for not informing my parents that my adopted son was actually my biological son until there was a financial incentive to do so. My parents have never loved my oldest kid, Nathaniel. He was my godson and the child of my dearest friend and her spouse. Sarah, my buddy, has been out and proud since she was 12. Even before she informed them, her parents were incredibly supportive and the best allies I could have imagined. Sarah and I went to middle school together and became friends. I had a huge crush on her till she said she liked girls. I was confused at first, but eventually I accepted it, and our friendship evolved and grew stronger. My folks despised her. Not to break my heart or anything. Simply because she was queer. I told them I wasn't going to quit being friends with her, and that if they forced me to choose, I'd rather be friends with her than their child. Fortunately for my parents, Sarah and her family relocated, but we remained in touch via email and MySpace. My parents believe that out of sight, out of mind. Sarah and I both applied and were accepted to the same college. 2 years in, we moved out of the dorms and into an apartment together. She was the greatest wing person ever. I apologize for the backstory. She met and married her wife. They needed a donor. I meet their standards. I agreed as long as we had a contract that released me from any financial liability. They consented, and I became Uncle Caden. I was present in their son's life from the minute he was born. Not at the moment. He emerged out of the room, not the birth canal. I also served as his father figure and godfather. We planned to inform him once he was old enough to comprehend. Then I met my wife, and we married. She knew the entire story because I didn't want her to believe I would keep such vital elements of my life hidden. We have 2 children together. I am LC with my parents for a variety of reasons. Their homophobia is at the bottom of the list, if that gives you any clue of how they are. They attended our wedding and spent time with both of our children. We did not deny them the opportunity to become grandparents. We simply don't go out of our way to include them. Sarah and her wife died in a boating accident. Nate was with Sarah's parents when this happened. I became his guardian and adopted him right away. He was 12. I make certain he sees relatives from both of his mother's families. I will continue to do so until he is old enough to go on his own. It has created a complex and bittersweet family. None of them realized I was more than simply his father. My parents, on the other hand, have always sought to alienate him. I've made it clear to them that he is my son, and I won't put up with their nonsense. I also didn't tell them the truth because I was scared they'd inform him before we were prepared. We told Nate when he turned 16. He smiled and claimed he had worked it out a long time ago but was fooling me and his parents by pretending he hadn't. He's always been a smartass. He also stated that he was content with his 2 sets of grandparents and didn't believe he was missing much with my parents. My wife's parents adore him, too. It came to a head in February. My parents received an inheritance after my grandma passed away. They didn't need the money, so they contacted me to ask if they might contribute to the kids' education funds. I thanked them and agreed. I told them they could send me the money, and I'd split it among the 3 accounts. Nathaniel has a solid bankroll, which we added to after receiving money from his mother's insurance. We also rented out their old house and used the proceeds for expenses. My wife and I both work and have decent savings for our children. However, extra money will not harm. My parents stated that they only wanted me to split it 2 ways. Only my children and my wife would be receiving money. I then replied, thanks but no thanks. I would not exclude one of my children because they were bad individuals. They ended up opening accounts on their own for my children. There is nothing I can do about that. My grandparents also established a trust fund from which their descendants might benefit when they reached the age of 18. It's not a lot of money, but every bit counts these days. Nate is graduating next year, so we filed the paperwork to get him the money. My uncle is one of the trustees, and when he told my parents, they freaked out because I never told them Nate was my child. I take it they were assholes because they knew I adopted him, which made him my child. There was a huge debate. You understand what we mean. How could you keep him from us? Blah, blah. I explained that for the past 5 years, they had always treated him poorly, so why would I include them in his life any further? They said they will sue for grandparents' rights. I laughed in their faces. I have a letter from them stating that they do not consider him their grandchild. As I already stated, we are LC with them, but both of my sisters believe I am being unduly nasty, despite the fact that they see our parents very seldom. I don't think my son missed much by not connecting with folks who would have undoubtedly said negative things about his biological parents. AITA for providing a voice clip of a coworker attempting to cheat on his wife to her. I was out for happy hour with some of my coworkers, James, Nate, and Ethan. I'm excellent friends with Ethan, but I don't know Nate very well, and I don't particularly like for James, but I've kept that to myself. So I was there primarily to hang out with Ethan. Nate and Ethan wanted to discuss privately about anything work-related, such as a quarrel with a client, and at one time I was alone with James. I began to suspect he was hitting on me, being flirtatious and touching, and I was not interested. Instead of reciprocating, I gave one-word answers and played with my phone. I felt a little awkward urging him to stop because he was towing the border of plausible deniability, and I assumed he'd simply say he hadn't done anything. I did, however, use my phone's voice recorder app, which I usually use when I believe someone is crossing a line. It has previously saved my ass. To clarify, recording in this manner is legal in my state. And it was on when James asked if I wanted to go out of here. I replied to where, and he said maybe we could go to my car and listen to some music. And I asked, what else? And he stuttered and said he wanted to get to know me better and spend some time alone with me. I replied, what about your wife? And he began telling me about how they are almost roommates, just together for the kids, and how she has probably been seeing other people as well. I didn't say much, just nodded along till he finished. Then I answered, nah, I'm not into that, and excused myself to the restroom. I was upset that James would try to cheat on his wife. I've met her and she's a lovely lady. I was also annoyed that he would want to get with me, a co-worker. I used to work at a different company with a really bad company culture, and I'm sick up with old-ass married engineers who attempt to kick the new young employee. I really don't want to deal with that. So I sent an email to James's wife, whose email address I knew from her response to a workplace mailing list email promoting a holiday party. And I said, I am not sure if you remember me, but my name is OP, and I work with your husband. We met during the company's last Christmas party. I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but your husband is trying to cheat on you. I understand it may be difficult to accept coming from a near stranger, so I've attached a recording of it. And I received a response from her in which she lashed out at me for luring him on. And for attempting to injure her by attaching the recording, which was really upsetting to hear. I wasn't attempting to lead him on. The only reason I asked leading questions like to where and what else was to get him to explain what he was doing. But I wonder if it was too much to send the actual audio. I empathize for her. That must have hurt to hear. AITA for mailing the voice recording? AITA for assisting my son to avoid his family after his wife cheated? I don't feel great about posting this on the internet, but everyone is too angry to talk to me, so this is all I've got. My son and his wife have been together for 6 years and have a tiny 4-year-old daughter. They've had troubles from time to time, but it appeared like they always worked through them. I know he adores her, and I assumed they were quite close. But 3 days ago, at 10 p.m., my kid arrived to my door, inebriated, unwell, and in tears. I guess she had been cheating on him for a while, and after an argument, she eventually revealed it. He just broke apart. He couldn't breathe properly. I washed him off and put him to bed, and that's where he's stayed since. He looks ill, he won't eat, and I've never seen him this upset. His wife and her relatives called us both repeatedly, but we didn't deal with it right away. He was distraught, and I wanted him to take a time to recover himself. This morning, I bit the bullet and returned her call. She was upset that he had gone out and left her with their daughter, and she stated she just wanted to talk about it like an adult. I told her that she could talk to him whenever he wanted, and that I believe he would want to work things out, but she needed to give him some space. She became more furious, and I warned her I wouldn't talk if she threw a fit, so she hung up. I'm not sure what she told her family, but I've had calls from her mother pleading with me not to let him abandon her and their daughter, and her sister berated me for supporting a deadbeat father. They're all freaking out. He is not abandoning his family. His life has been flipped upside down, and I want him to have some time to rediscover his footing. It's only been 3 days. He hasn't ran away. But now everyone is outraged at me for allowing my son to leave his daughter, despite the fact that he adores that little child and would never just up and leave. So, am I the asshole for having him stay with me to get away from his parents? I understand that it puts his wife in a difficult situation, but it's been 3 days and she barely works part-time. he hasn't given her an impossible burden. And I fully intend to have my kid deal with this, but I just can't image him feeling this way, and I don't believe he could have a meaningful talk in this manner. What shall I do? I'm not trying to let him avoid his obligations, but he's hurting and needs time to breathe. Some clarifications and edits, of course. We've discussed the potential that his kid isn't biologically his, but he has no intention of abandoning her. He adores his young kid and would do anything for her. I'm not sure if her family is aware of the complete tale. I haven't even attempted chatting to them yet. AITA for not paying alimony to my unfaithful ex-wife. I met my wife in my early 30s. She was in her mid-20s at the time. I was already well established and had made a large amount of money as a quant while diligently investing my savings. She, on the other hand, had never attended college and was fine working for the minimum salary. So when I met her, we instantly clicked, and I fell head over heels for her. We marry, move in together, and soon have 3 children. When we were expecting our first child, she told me she wanted to be a stay-at-home mother. Obviously, I was jealous, but I went along with it because it made sense. So she will spend the next 20+ years as a stay-at-home mom caring for our children while I work 12-hour days and more. I'm not disparaging stay-at-home moms, but in the context of our marriage, she had a very relaxed lifestyle. A few years ago, I found out she was cheating on me with her friend's spouse. Divorce clearly ensued. Our only substantial asset in the United States was our house, which was acquired prior to marriage. We shared a bank account, but because I am a finance professional, I handled all of our money and invested them abroad in my home country for tax reasons. Now, if we had just drifted apart or she had stated that she was dissatisfied, I would not hesitate to pay what was fair. But the fact that she cheated on me makes me detest paying her anything. So, in the divorce, she is granted half of our marital interests, more than 90% of which are abroad in my name, as well as alimony for 20 years at 30% of my wage. So now I have the opportunity to get completely out of this situation by returning to my native country and never looking back. So I sell our house as quickly as possible, transfer the funds abroad, and return to my native country, all the while teasing her about why it's taking so long to liquidate our savings. I immediately stopped paying alimony after I moved abroad. Now she has no legal remedy, I double-checked with lawyers, and is left with her portion of the minimal sum we had in the States. The reason I'm asking is that my own children are divided on this. My kid is 100% on my side, whereas my daughters are 90% on their mother's side. I thought it would be interesting to hear people's thoughts on this. I don't want my wife to take a trip with a friend who cheats on her husband. I have been married for over 10 years, and my wife's excellent female friend is an alcoholic. My wife is not an alcoholic, but she does binge drink when she goes out. When she's intoxicated, her guard is down, and she and her pal share very little responsibility since they can egg each other on. Years ago, we went to see her friend out of town, and her friend returned a man to her apartment after the bar closed. It was awkward. The following year, my wife went to see her alone, and I only recently discovered that the buddy had brought back a different man and had slept with him while my wife was there. My wife said she did nothing and departed the next morning, but it was painful to hear. The friend is now married and cheats on her husband. She believes her spouse is an asshole. He is very controlling, but instead of dealing with it, she resents him and goes out to have fun however she wants. Let's fast forward to now. We have several children, and my wife is really anxious. I would like her to do whatever that will help her relax. Her buddy wants to go to New Orleans for a girls' trip, just the 2 of them, and my wife is pondering whether she should go. I don't attempt to be a controlling husband, but the friend's previous choices and my wife's inability to stop drinking when we go out make me uneasy. I don't think my wife would intentionally cheat on me, but I don't think her alcoholic friend, who brings back random men, would be a good influence on her, especially when she admits to becoming way too drunk. I don't object if my wife gets out with a bunch of friends, most of whom have children, but this one friend has previously made questionable judgments. I don't want her to leave, but I'm not sure how to bring this up without offending the buddy. AITA, what if I told her not to go to New Orleans with her promiscuous friend? AITA for supporting my friend after he strayed on his wife? My 27M friend, 24M, and his wife have been married 3 years and have 2 little children. Another woman just contacted his wife to inform her that they slept together a few years ago while they were living in different states. He was serving in the military. This has caused a lot of upheaval in their marriage, and things have been extremely stressful. However, the wife has recently become quite toxic, and while I understand she is hurt, she is taking advantage of the situation to get her way on everything. Most recently, she guilt-tripped my buddy into purchasing an expensive cat because, in her words, she deserves it. They already have 5 other cats and 2 little babies, and they don't have much money to spend on another pricey pet. My buddy pledged to keep the peace. He wants to save his marriage, but at what cost? She's doing anything she wants, letting the kids out late, forcing him to do extra housework despite the fact that he works a physically demanding job, and now the cat dilemma. I told my wife about the scenario and how I think she's being harsh, but she claims his wife is most likely really wounded and isn't dealing well with all of the emotions that come with discovering he strayed. As I already stated, I empathize, but this is no justification to treat my friend like dirt. There are 2 ways to deal with the situation, healthy and unhealthy, and she is selecting the unhealthy one, which is creating additional damage. My wife is now angry at me. She stated that she will always take the wife's side and assist her in any way she needs. After all, he made the mistake, and he must face the repercussions of his conduct. She claims he should give her whatever she wants. But where exactly do you draw the line? When will he cease paying for a mistake made years ago? This has caused a wedge between myself and my wife. However, I do not believe I am being TA here by siding with my pals. Look, I know what he did was terrible, but 2 wrongs don't make a right, and she's just being spiteful and selfish, having her way with whatever she wants and guilting him into making major decisions that will only harm his family even more. AITA for being furious that my brother forgave his unfaithful wife but refuses to forgive my spouse for assisting his wife in infidelity and plans to relocate our parents to another country? My brother and I are twins, born shortly after our Indian parents moved to the United States. As brown kids, school was difficult, but we were always there for one another. My brother got into an Ivy League institution, whereas I got into an excellent university. In university, I met my future husband and his douchebag best friend, D-Bag. So, after uni, H and I decided to marry. Major drama ensued at home. H is white, but my brother stood up for us, and things gradually improved, and I married him. A year later, my brother traveled to India for work, stayed for 3 years, met an Indian girl, fell in love, married, and decided to return to the United States in 2015. SIL got a job at a company that does H&D bag work. In December 2017, brother found SIL had been cheating on him for 4 months with D-Bag. He was upset. SIL even left him for D-Bag after New Year's, but D-Bag abandoned her. SIL had a mental breakdown, and did something that resulted in her deportation. My brother became a recluse and began avoiding everyone. In May 2018, he was offered a pretty good job in Qatar, which he accepted and moved away, but not before telling us the whole truth. H knew about the affair and even helped D-Bag/SIL conceal it. This put a significant strain on my relationship with H. H has apologized to everyone and shown sincere regret for everything. My brother refuses to speak to him, and my parents are extremely chilly towards him. My brother has been in contact with us for the past 2 years, and he is making 7 figures in Qatar. He also sends my daughter gifts on her birthday. On a family conversation last Friday, he informed us that after returning to India, SIL had medical treatment for BPD and low self-esteem. He has been making short travels to India since April 2018 to meet with her and his in-laws until March 2020. During quarantine, they discussed living together in Qatar once everything normalized. He has urged my folks to join him. He lives in Qatar because he never wants to return to the United States. I'm opposed to my parents going to Qatar because it will leave me without any family here, but I believe they are considering it. So I finally said, now that he has forgiven Sil, when does he plan to forgive my husband and move on? I would like things to return to normal. He stated that he owes my husband nothing, not forgiveness or a relationship, and that even if he forgives him, he will never forget what happened. This made me lose my mind. I told him it felt like he was punishing me for what occurred, especially by attempting to take mom and dad away with him. Why is he being such an AH? He informed me that my husband is the AH, and that not everything is about me. He needs to live his own life, and I should as well. He gave mom and dad a proposition, and they could decide for themselves, and then he stopped the conversation. He is no longer taking my calls, and my folks are upset with me. AITA for not telling my wife I cheated on her? Last week was my 30th wedding anniversary. Today I turn 54, and my wife and I begin our retirement. My wife and I met through friends when we were 16, and we began dating shortly after. We were both complete virgins when we met, so we learned and lived everything together. We dated throughout high school and long distance through college, difficult, before marrying at 23. We now have 2 sons and a daughter, ages 27, 24, and 22, respectively. When I was 27, I had an affair with another lady because I was curious, inebriated, and stupid. I don't recall many of the facts, which aren't relevant, but it was a woman neither of us had ever met, and I never heard from her again. As far as I know, my wife has never learned about this or questioned my trustworthiness. My wife attended college but did not pursue a profession, instead choosing to care for our children. It was difficult for a while, and we were both stressed, especially around the time of the affair, not making excuses for myself, but providing context to understand why I was so kicking short-sighted and drinking. But I eventually found a better job. We began budgeting and paid off our loans. Money was never an issue after that, and we've been happy ever since. I've accepted that I'll never be completely happy again if I want her to have the happiness she deserves. I don't want to pretend that remorse is still eating me alive every day. I still love my wife, and she loves me. We've had so many pleasant and amazing memories, and we still do every day. However, the majority of them are accompanied with a sense of guilt. She dedicated her life to me, our children, and our family. Now that we have all of the freedom we've been waiting for in our life, I feel as if I've come to a crossroads with just 2 options. Continue to live your life normally. Make vacations with my wife. Play with my grandchildren. Give her the retirement and end-of-life care she deserves with her spouse, whom she adores. I am not truly happy, and I may never be, but I am not in a bad position. I could endure this degree of anguish for the rest of my life, and I probably deserve it. Tell her. I'm not sure if she'd leave me now or forgive me. I believe she deserves to know the truth, but it may crush her at a period in her life when she should be the happiest. So, am I an asshole for not telling my wife? Is it time to tell her now? Edit for clarification. I realize I was an asshole for not informing her when it happened. And I know that every year I don't, I become a bigger asshole, but what now? AITA for abandoning my 3-year-old son after discovering he isn't mine and my wife cheated on me? I don't want to go into depth because I'm not legally divorced. Separated. Long story short, I discovered that my child, or so I thought, was not really mine. My wife cheated on me with her ex, and I discovered communications. She had been cheating on me on and off during our marriage. I discovered that my wife never loved me. She just married me because she was in her 30s and I was a responsible man who would make a decent father. I was upset after finding out. I've always wanted to be a family man, and hearing this destroyed me. I've also met her ex in person before. And finding out that my son might look like him was too much. I chose to end things totally with my ex. I do not want to parent another man's child. And I hope to be able to begin a new relationship and have children of my own. However, my parents believe I am in the wrong and should not turn my back on my son. I disagree, it hurts, but I believe in 5 years I will have made the right decision.